but I want to introduce Bjorn to you, which many of you know, but some people might not. Bjorn, the people that are on right now, I see Daryl is on. I don't know if he's going to be able to say hello or not, but I'm glad he got to join. But uh, us old guys certainly would be familiar with you and the work and research you've done. And um, I want to mention that Bjorn and I have known each other a long time back from the Dave King days. And he has worked with more hockey countries and more teams in the development side and the competitive side than anybody I know. And he recently sent an email out to me with an essay. What was the title of that essay, Bjorn?
Team building under the African sun.
And
S-U-N, not the boy, not the star.
and I'm going to be sharing that later today because I'm hoping to have Bjorn on again next week formally. But I believe this will be a session where we can pick his brains because obviously he's trying to build the program in Africa now. And I know he's worked in France. Uh, I, when I was at the Nagano Olympics, Bjorn was assisting Dave King with the Japanese national team. And we've had a very close relationship for so many years. And Daryl would appreciate Bjorn, I'm sure, because in that era of our development, we were really dedicated to the good of the game and sharing information. Now, Bjorn, on this, Mike Benelli is on. He's from, I might get him to introduce himself to you right now. And then I'll have you just introduce yourself, Bjorn, and give us a bit more of your background. And I have a few questions because we Skyped last night and it was amazing what you had to say about the game in general and the difference between the women's game and how far it's come along and the nature of North American hockey compared to hockey today has grown and changed. So, Mike, would you please introduce yourself to Bjorn?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Wally. And Bjorn, I haven't met you and haven't been on the call with you, but thanks for coming on and appreciate meeting you. Yeah, I'm here in the U.S., mostly in New York is my home base. And over the last, 35 years, I've been building rinks around the East Coast and building youth hockey programs. And I coaching college hockey and prep school hockey and youth hockey. And the last 5 years, I kind of branched out on my own and started just a consulting company because I think my wife put her foot down that we weren't going to be moving anymore with the kids. So I said, okay, well, let me see if I can get the best case scenario. I'm in a good spot in the country. So I'm coaching with the Connecticut Junior Rangers right now in Connecticut with my 14U. And I do some stuff with the New York Rangers for my little guy. I was fortunate enough to be on the ice every Monday night with Marty St. Louis, but I guess I'll be missing him now on Mondays. So and Wally, I guess we give him an excuse for not being on with Roger last week. So on the call we had, I know you're on mute, but I think
no excuse.
yeah, we'll give him a little. Say, hey, what were you busy? But I think but the last couple of years I've been just working with youth hockey programs and growing the game. I probably sell more. If you're, obviously know Europe, I sell floorball sticks, custom made floorball sticks to NHL clubs. So right now I have, probably 50, 60, 70,000 sticks with the Florida Panthers, the Devils, Rangers, Islanders, Pittsburgh Penguins. And we use all that for our outreach. So when we go into schools or youth hockey clubs, and we have a new program we're going to announce soon, hopefully, with an NHL, an up-and-coming Zorro Michigan specialist soon that will help just let kids have creativity with the sticks off the ice and let them have the opportunity to translate it on the ice later on.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, okay.
In a nutshell.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Bjorn, of all the guests we've had on, you're the most intriguing. Your stories, I just can't imagine that you're still as active as you are, where you are, and what you've done in the game. And I recall you doing a clinic years ago, and you did some research, and you came up with gray zones, green zones, red zones, and it was just amazing. And it, those terms don't seem to have as much application today. Um, the way the game's played, the risk taking in the red zone areas at the blue line on entries is, I don't think they're worried about that at all anymore. The game we were raised in focused on defense first, low risk hockey, risk and reward. And I don't know that risk and reward is even a term that exists anymore. But Bjorn, please introduce yourself. And I don't know if you can, we have enough time to hear your whole story, but give us a bit of it. And then if there's any questions out there from anyone, please feel free. I have a million. And I'm hoping to have Bjorn on again next week, and we'll Skype privately many times now. Go ahead, Bjorn.
Thanks, Wally. I want to start then where Mike ended with the floorball, because floorball is obviously a sport that was invented in Sweden, if you want to, but it actually goes back to New York, where you are. This is quite a few years ago, many years ago. I was back home in Sweden, and my friends were doing some fun fitness activity in their 40s, and they were playing this game that we used to play in school. And in school, there were no rules. You got the stick in your hand and you played hockey, and if the kid was weak and afraid, so better, they're going to get out of the way. But that had evolved over the years I've been abroad. And I was amazed to see 10,000 spectators and all the skills they have and how big the sport was. So my friend, he knows the owner of Unihawk, that company, Unihawk. So I got to meet him, and I said, hey, I would really like to take these sticks to Canada and have the kids who cannot afford to play hockey play this, and also for hockey schools to work off ice for skills development. So we took a few sticks over and introduced them in a hockey academy. And in that hockey academy, there were players like Dion Phaneuf and Jean Bell and Tarnasky and Nicholson, both of them, the Megan and the brother, Brandon, and some pretty high-profile, who became high-profile players later, were in that hockey academy. And in the beginning, we played, 10 minutes of that, and then we did normal weight training. And then it was 15 minutes, and then it was like 50 minutes of play and 50 minutes of skills with them. And at the end, that's the only thing I wanted to do. I wanted to play that game. So I said, if this is good enough for them, kids who cannot afford it will be even better. So Lions Club got into it and bought a set of boards. And I don't remember how many sticks, but I think it was about 12 schools who got sticks for free and used the boards for 1 week. If a teacher volunteered to practice once a week and participate in 3 tournaments that the Lions Club organized. And it still goes on. We have this trophy still going on, and they move those boards around, and the kids are playing. And the guys who started it as instructors, they formed the national team.
That was the Bjorn Kinding.
At the time, I couldn't play, and since I was not skilled enough, that was another reason, but that's more embarrassing to admit. So I coached the team, and we went to Madrid, and we played in the World Championship in the C level. And since that year, Canada's been participating in every World Championship. Those local tournaments for poor kids still going on in Edmonton with the Lions Club. And it's absolutely a fantastic sport for people who cannot afford to play hockey or just don't want to be so serious, because hockey takes a big demand from the whole family. So it's funny that you brought it up, because that was my thinking. When did I move to Canada? 24 years ago? Yeah, 24 years ago when we started this, roughly.
Yeah, so I'll definitely I know you want to get on with your resume, and I want to hear your background, because now I'm even more intrigued. But I'll get you. I'll get on one of the Skype calls with Wally. But yeah, we exactly are at that point was introducing it. Actually Lou Varro was a huge influence on mine here, because he just said, listen, get hockey in school and you'll have hockey players. And the only way to do it is to get them in a basically a free hockey class. We did, I've done programs in Puerto Rico. I did a huge program with Brian Trache up in British Columbia with the First Nations, and that was a really big success. And I think, and even the kids that we have in South Florida and the Bronx, New York, and kids from really, like, we laugh. The guy I work with Excel, actually, the guy's out of Finland, and we do all our sticks with Excel. And Pavel Barber up in Canada is a huge influencer with floorball and all the tricks and the fun. But I think what we were, our goal was really to say, well, how do you get this? I never really was a floorball guy. I was just like, well, I just think it's the way to grow the sport of ice hockey. Who really cares about floorball? But the kids love it. You're absolutely right. I had one quick story. I had it in gym class with our prep school team when I first brought it over from Norway. And because I was looking for an alternative to dry land training, I said, oh, these kids, they hate running. They hate, they hate doing the weight room all the time. They don't want to do the cardio. So we'll just start playing floorball. And I had this one little kid out there, little Puerto Rican kid running around, or whatever. I don't know who he was. Maybe he was Dominican, probably the best player on the court, running around. I said, hey, how do we not have that kid playing on the team? Like, he'll never let him play because his dad is Mariano Rivera of the Yankees, and he said he's not going to let him play ice hockey. But he was just a great athlete, so he picked it up. He understood the sport right away. I mean, never had learned hockey, but you're right. It's a great. I call it a gateway sport for us, for hockey players, and it is.
I mean, it is a gateway sport. Could be, but it's definitely a sport of its own. Sweden is a hockey country. Soccer is the biggest sport. Second biggest sport, uni hockey, or floorball as you call it. Twice as big as ice hockey, both for male and female.
Yeah,
and, it's just another group of athletes who take in that sport. We haven't lost any hockey players. It's just like twice as many, or 3 times as many kids are now doing competitive sports. So, just one last parenthesis on that topic. Börje Salming, he has his own branding, so he's fully invested in that. And 1981, and Wally would know that, AIK won the Swedish championship, the pro league, with a coach. His name is Dan Hubert, who Wally might know him too, like a very hard, tough, no-nonsense coach. Their summer training was uni hockey with Weighted West. And so it's been on for a part of hockey for a long time, but it definitely has a life of its own that's twice as big as hockey in Sweden.
Yeah, it's
I'm
great.
going to go on with myself. I hate to talk about myself, but I've always been curious. My father was a teacher, so I better knew stuff. Otherwise, I had nothing to talk about at the dinner table, where I'd just be talked down to the whole time. So I guess it comes a little from that. I want to learn things, see new things. And as I grew up, traveling was extremely expensive, so that was very luxury if you could go somewhere. So every time I had a chance later on in life to go somewhere for hockey, I just took it. As I said, my first trip to States lasted for 7 years, where I ended up in Michigan Tech, and I went to their hockey school every summer as an instructor from, 79 to 86. And after that, just being invited to speak at conferences was never maybe, or see if I have time. I always came. I was out in Boston 10 times with them in the Massachusetts hockey, and as Wally know, with the IHF and Hockey Canada and USA Hockey and so on. If anyone asked me, I was there, because traveling for me was luxury and an opportunity to learn from other people. But then as a coach, I started to coach really early. I played soccer and hockey, and I started to coach when I was 14, soccer, because that's what you did back in Sweden. You were part of an association, and that was like a big family. And if you could help the day you didn't practice yourself, you helped with younger kids. And then hockey, I started to coach when I was 16, and then I got injured when I was 19, playing my last game when the year after I was a junior. And I didn't know it at that time, but people around me, they really, really helped me to get into hockey and fast-tracked me to all the courses. I just thought that, I'm great because I'm already qualified to go to all these courses, and I get offers to work some places. But it was all behind my back. People were just helping me, pushing me, and giving me chances. So I was lucky when I was 22 to step into professional hockey as a head coach in Sweden. And my oldest player was 36. So that was a way of coaching back then that I don't have now anymore. But as a 22-year-old kid coaching a 36-year-old player, you cannot be too authoritarian, and you cannot be the one who knows everything. So you have to start some kind of a teamwork with your players and not be a dictator. And I kind of never grew out of that. I always said that coaching is teamwork. I have a job to do, and your job is to try to understand what I'm saying and try to execute it. And once you got it executed, then coaching has appeared. But I do a little, you do a lot, and together as a team, we create coaching. If I stand in front of a whiteboard and just talk, that's not coaching. Coaching is when the player has learned and the player has actually executed. And to get someone to execute anything, they need to want to execute it. So that's where the communication goes the other way. Like I have to understand what the player wants to do, and I have to understand where I can help him to go where he wants to go, or I can help him to open doors and say, yeah, you might think this is where you want to do, but look at this. This is another opportunity. What about that? And once you got the will of the player, the goal is the same for everybody on the ice, then you can start to coach, and it's really a teamwork. And as I said, I always wanted to travel, and I always wanted to do new things. So when I got the chance when I was 24 to coach in Denmark, I jumped on that, coached in that league. And when I was 26, they asked me to coach the national team. So I was 26-year-old coaching the Danish national team. And it went from there. I was in Switzerland then for 13 years, coaching the Swiss league, before David King hired me to coach the Olympic team. At the same time, Wally was coaching the female team at the Olympics. And then I moved to Canada because I just thought Canadians are freaking crazy. We played exhibition games. Wally, you saw them, some of them, against Team Canada with Andy Murray, who had a tough battle with for several years in the Swiss league. And now he was with the Canadians, who were like, 4 inches bigger and 20 pounds heavier on average. And they just slaughter us like game after game. And like almost not on the scoreboard, because they actually won a few games, but physically they were just like no pardon. Like they didn't care if it was an exhibition game. They just ran over our Japanese players. We had 3 guys with knee injuries before the Olympics started. And I just said, like, these guys are stupid. Like, I have to understand where they come from. So I have to live in that country. So we moved to Canada in '98 and started to work there. And I must say that some of the Canadians I met, they were not stupid. I was surprised to see that. There were actually some pretty decent guys. But anyway, then I was back in Europe again. So overall, I coached more than 1,000 games, professional and international games. And I done a lot of coaching clinics, and I worked in Sweden, Denmark, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, France, Japan, now in South Africa, US, but only as a consultant, not as a coach, and in Canada. So I work with females at the Oval Extreme, and I work with male hockey players mainly. But that's kind of been my life, and now I'm in South Africa here for 3-4 months, and we're going to have a national team playing at the World Championship, and hopefully COVID will allow us to play. That's our biggest opponent right now, COVID. So if you have nothing else to do in March, come to Cape Town and watch South Africa play against Thailand. You know, that's the highlight of the season here for us. So, yeah, that's basically what I've kept myself busy since 1957 when I was born until today.
Tom, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Bjorn knows you. We talked last night about you and Yuri, and he didn't know that Yuri had passed, but go ahead, Tom.
Yeah. Hi, Bjorn. I think last time I saw you we were presenting in Halifax at St. Mary's University, I think.
That's a long time ago. Yeah, it was a female world championship. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, last night Wally did a great team building thing about hold the rope with my team. But yeah, it's just I just want to say hi to you. It's good to see you.
My pleasure.
I'm coaching college girls right now, and kind of in it. I may be the oldest college coach around. I don't know. I turned 75 this year.
Which college is it?
I'm at SAIT.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm the only guy that's coached at all three institutions, State, U of C, and Mount Royal.
Yeah.
But I'm still doing it and having a lot of fun doing it. And I do a lot of stuff on the internet and kind of to help other coaches. So, anyways, just wanted to say hi to you and good to see you.
Yeah. Good to see you. Even though I can only see half of you, it's good to see you.
I don't know. I can't see my picture there, so I don't know which part is showing.
I see your hair. Oh, there is a little smile too. That's good too.
You
Yes,
can see
very,
me
very
now?
quickly before I let everyone else speak. It's funny that Tom and Wally are here because first time I came to Calgary, that was to spend some time with Dave King, and that was '87, the year before the Olympics. And he introduced me to Wally and introduced me to Tom. So it's a kind of bit of a flashback here to have you both at the same time.
Yeah.
Bjorn, I could ask 100,000 questions. The one about Africa, we'll wait till next week because I'm going to share your essay, and we'll sort of start there next week. But this week, in your conversation last night, you said some things that just tweaked my brain about the game today, and I'm just curious what you think of the game of hockey and how it's evolved over time to what it is today, both on the male side and the female side, how it's changed, where it appears to be going in terms of the game we knew and the game that's becoming now.
Yeah, obviously there were two totally different styles back then, before '72, when the Soviet Union played their way of hockey, which was based on mobility and 20 guys doing the same thing or playing the same way, high conditioning, puck movement, interchange from position, and so on. And NHL, where you had smaller rosters, better guys played much more. Was more of a standing still game with the power instead of mobility, and also more brutal game. And I think parallel to hockey's development, society have changed. It's still a fringe, I think it's in English, of spectators who enjoy the blood, but there is a lot of opportunities for them to go and see WWF and all kind of things they call themselves. And hockey doesn't have to compete with that kind of sport anymore. On the US market, they had to compete with football before, but now they are so established, so they have their own fan base. And at the same time, it's not okay for having star players injured. It's a big loss in the capacity of the team, but also a big loss in the investment and a big loss in the attraction. And I can't remember when Scott Stevens won the MVP. When was that? New Jersey won the cup and Scott Stevens got the MVP. Back in late 80s or early 90s, whatever. I said, I mean, these guys must be absolutely crazy because he took out a star player every round. He took out Korea, he took out Eric Lindros, and he took out one more who I forgot who that was now. And they're making the MVP. Like, he's the guy who ruined the entertainment value for all these owners and also the entertainment value for the people who buy the season tickets. And that's the MVP. And I think nowadays they think totally different. They cannot afford to have players injured. There is an insurance issue too with the concussions and those things that we heard from NFL. And we want the best players to play better. So when they started with 4 referees, when they did the end zones bigger, things started to change a bit. And it became much more a play game the way the Russians played back in the 70s. No one will say that in NHL, and no one will say that in Canada, that we are copying the communist Soviet Union style of playing. It's not a good marketing tool. But if you look at it, just the way everyone breaks out on the power play now, with the backpass in neutral zone. When did you see that in the 70s or 80s or 90s in the NHL? As good as Edmonton Oilers was, with Kent Nilsson came in, and obviously Gretzky and the great ones, having a lot of finesse and a lot of playmaking. This free flow skating was not the main way of playing, and now it's starting to be. And you see forward swinging behind the defenseman for drop passes, and you're picking up speed with three guys deep around the blue line or deep in the zone and attack. It's getting much more of a play creative game than a defensive battle. And I don't know if females hockey has a lot to do with it, but if you see the development of female hockey, they are certainly leading the way there. They are two steps ahead of not having body checking, so they can allow themselves to make these plays where male hockey players still might only have the option to chip and chase because there's no time to make plays. When I coached the Oval Extreme and we had all these Canadian Olympians on the team, the first thing I got so impressed of was how they can get the puck to the center by the breakouts. And then I realized that, yeah, they can do that not because the center is that great, but because the center doesn't have to worry that he or she, in this case, would get her head knocked off if she looked too much at the puck. So centers like the Gina Kingsbury and playmakers like Tessa Bonholm, those guys look like superstars because they didn't have to worry about getting taken out of the play before they made a play or received a pass. They could actually play. And if you look at the females today, like our South African males team, who are big and strong and very much Canadian mentality in this country, we wouldn't last 10 minutes against the Canadian females team. The game would be over in the first period. Would have no chance to keep up with them. And I think the hockey for male is going that direction. We don't want people to get hurt. We don't want a static defensive battle. We want the stars to shine, and we want the creativity and mobility that makes hockey so unique. Only in hockey, from all the sports, you skate. Only in hockey you can just skate 100 miles an hour and then glide, and you still go 100 miles an hour as you do all these fancy things. And yeah, the hockey is going in my direction, in my opinion, towards the way the Soviet Union played 40 years ago, and that's for the better of the game. With that said, now youth hockey should play that way anyway, because they don't develop if they play some trap hockey or don't chip and chase. Too many times you got maybe 3 lines are not allowed to do anything than what the coach tell them to do, and maybe 1 line is to do something. And at the end of the season, that line who are allowed to do something has to play double shift now because the other guys have not developed. So I'm really happy to see the development. Bigger end zones, 4 referees, let the best players play, create space for them, and be very hard on brutal play because we don't need it.
Bjorn, Daryl Belfry has put his hand up. I'm so happy he's joined because to me, the two of you talking, I think the same language to a degree. So I'm going to ask Daryl. He's put his hand up. Go ahead, Daryl.
Can you hear me?
Yes, introduce yourself. I'm surprising, Daryl, because I talked to Bjorn last night, and he isn't as familiar with you as I thought he should be, given that he keeps up with the game. But I'm going to purchase a copy of your book and send it to him in Africa. And we're trying to find because he lives in hotels, we're trying to find a mailing address, and he's going to send me the president of the African Hockey Association to deliver the book to. So go ahead, Daryl.
So you won't have to purchase it because I'll send it myself. But I really appreciate that, Wally. I wanted to say to you, Bjorn, when I look back on my career, you did a presentation, I want to say it was 91 or 92 in Toronto on a study that you had done and had published on transition hockey. And I believe you had published it, I want to say in 1990, but I probably saw you speaking live 91 or 92. So at the time, I was probably 25 years old, 26 years old. I was kind of in the midst of my building phase of my career. And in the context of that presentation, like when I was going to these presentations, most of them were pretty much the same. Like you gone to one, you gone to them all. Someone's going to come up, they're going to talk about their, like the assistant coach of one of the NHL teams going to get up, talk about penalty kill. Next guy's going to come up, he's going to talk about power play. Next guy's going to come up, he's going to talk about forecheck. All of a sudden you come up and you talk about transition hockey, and you're talking about zones of the ice, where turnovers are going to hurt you, and it's color coded, and there's percentages, and there's actual data, and it's like nothing I'd ever really seen before. And I was studying the game, but I'd never really put any numbers to it. I had only studied it to try to see things I was looking for. So I wanted to know, I wanted to teach someone to skate. So I watched good skaters and I look, where's their elbow? What's their knee? What's their, that's how I had studied the game before. When I finished listening to your presentation, I went home and I changed every which way I was studying the game thereafter. I was looking for instance rates, which is what you were talking about, which was how often is this happening? What is the success rate of what's happening? And if we know such information, does that change how we think? Because now we know. So I started studying the game from a completely different perspective. So I would say that presentation that I saw in 91 or 92, somewhere in Toronto, is in the top very small percentage, like top 5, top 10 most influential things that ever happened that changed the trajectory of my career. So I talk very highly about Wally, because he's also in that top 5 of, I've read, when I went through the coaching clinics, his name was all throughout every book because he was an author of all the coaching courses. And I'm like, if I could just meet that guy just in my life, I will have done something, because he was influencing literally the entire country of Canada in how they thought. When I listened to you and I took that presentation, you gave out like pamphlets of it, or the people that did, they sent it afterwards, and I got a chance to like really study it. And it was probably top of mind for 3 or 4 years after, and just trying to go back to it and think about it differently. And then you talk about transition, but I was studying something else. So how could I apply it in that way? But I used a lot of that for, like I said, years and years and years afterwards. And I would say that the core of what I do now is very much riddled with what you had done at that time. So when Wally talks, and you are now here on a free call to everybody who Wally has on his list, and you were in the middle of Toronto doing a presentation to a bunch of snot-nosed coaches who really didn't know anything about nothing and were just there to listen. You just never know who you're talking to, because that snot-nosed kid was me, and that changed the course of my career and my life. And it just was proof positive every time Wally brings someone like you, that I have a personal relationship, even though you have no idea who I am or what I've done or what's happened thereafter. I certainly know you, because you were a major impact in my life, even though you did so anonymously, in the sense of what you thought of me, and you didn't know who you were speaking to or where that information was going to go. And I just want to tell you that, and share that story, because that would be certainly a story you've probably heard before. I'm sure that I wasn't the only one that felt like that, and you probably have a long list of similar stories of people that did so. But I'm sure it never gets old to hear that something that you put your blood, sweat, and tears into for probably so long. Like, that study was not something you did in 5 minutes. That was a big study with a lot of hours put in, and you just never know where it goes. And I can tell you that work was critical, and it impacted me and every player I've worked with and every coach and every organization I've worked with thereafter. So I want to thank you to start. And I know it's a long diatribe on all of that, but I think it's important to share things like that, because people now, the ironic part about it is people say similar things to me. And I'm always curious about the context. And so that's why I go out of my way in situations like this to really share all the details, because I'm sure that that's something that was important to you, and you didn't know when you were down there doing that research that would be the impact that some Canadian kid would then, who has no business really being in hockey at that time. It really didn't have there was no reason for me to do anything. You created an avenue of study and opportunity for me. I'll always be grateful. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. That's really nice to hear. And it goes back to a little bit about that coaching is teamwork. As a coach, my job is to maybe see the plans, but it's not worth anything if the player, and in this case a coach, take that seed and water it and nurse it and apply it in a way that makes sense. Because there's been a lot of coaches who took my word as gospel and they just play that way. And that was never the intention, that you should just stay back and wait, because you still have to create some goals to win the game. If both teams just play on transition, they're going to end up with 250 transitions each, and the game's going to be 2-2. And what you obviously did was that you took some information and researched on it and see how it could be implemented in a functional way, and it became a small part that grew to something big, the way you handle it. And that's what I say. Coaching is teamwork. It's not coach says and you do. Coach says and you try to understand and you process and you work with it and you try to implement it. And if you implement it in a successful way, then it's coaching, what the two parts have done together. So it's a good example of teamwork in coaching.
If I could continue, I wanted to just continue to offer that point, because I think it's a good one. My whole MO in my career was to take people's information that I was learning and have that become the starting point of my study. I wasn't big on, Bjorn came, he made a really compelling case towards transition at that time. My attitude was never to take that and then apply it directly in exactly what it was. I was more interested in the process of study and how you came to come up with that study. I was less interested in, especially at that time, I was less interested in transition as a subject matter. I was more interested in the study and how you came up with it, because I'd never seen anybody do that before in hockey. I knew people studied the game, but I'd never seen it like that. And so I think the important lesson for me was trying to deduct some of your process and then have that become a starting point for my own study. I think you raise a good point. Like, I've done this quite a bit myself, and I don't know if you share this thought or not, but whenever I've done a study and I've published it, it's almost irrelevant in some cases, the context of what it was I was studying, because of the length of time it took me to study such material. A lot would then have changed. But in between the time I started the study to the time in which I was finished, my own thoughts towards that subject matter had already evolved. Like 6 months later, after I had finished it, I already knew more from the benefit of the study. So once I started to do studies like that, on my own, I would get so frustrated, because I would finish the study. In my mind, it would come to a conclusion, and I would be looking at it 6 months later and go, geez, like at least 10% of my thought process here has already evolved in the 6 months that's followed. So I published this study, but what's the point? Like, I'm now so much further ahead than what I was when I was originally studying it. And then I come back to the way I was applying it with you. It's not necessarily about the subject matter. The subject matter is one part of it. And however, like maybe you're really interested in transition. So you take some of those ideas, but that becomes a starting point, because I would be shocked if you said, no, the way I think about transition in that study, that's the same way I thought about that 2 years after. Probably not. You probably learned a tremendous amount beyond that in those 2 years. Then you would have, the study that you would publish 2 years after would have some different elements and ideas to it. So it's important that we take those studies from that point is the starting point to take it wherever it was. And I just love that process. And I'm more curious about that. And if I could ask just one question, I don't need to be, belaboring the point here, but I'd love to ask one question as it related to the transition study that I'm most familiar with. In the 6 months to the year that followed, what was the thing or what was the element that you found evolved the quickest and was starting to change your mind or alter your mind, or caused you pause to perhaps go back into your own study to see, what those differences or trends were going to become? Was there anything that popped up, or even when you were out on the road, making the presentations, had you run into people, or as you were then doing consulting with those teams, what was it in the year to 2 years later? What part of that transition study really evolved for you?
I know there are two things. One is how can I get the players who are already professional players to rethink the game and believe that this is a better way to play? So how can I sell this to a player in a practical way that they start to believe in spending so much time on transition? And so that was a big thing. It's one thing to say, in quotation, no, you're right. Other thing is to make the other people believe you're right, because at the end they're going to do it. So how to actually implement it in a culture where all the players already have played totally different and made their money playing totally differently. And the other one was the feedback I got from coaches that kind of shocked me. All of a sudden, it was almost like a religion, Terry Crisp came up to me and said that, it's a big part of our playbook now in Nashville. And when Terry Crisp won the Stanley Cup with the Calgary Flames, why change anything, And it didn't work or maybe it did work, I don't know. But I mean, he didn't last as a coach very long in Nashville, so maybe it would have been better off to keep going the way he was, or maybe tweak it a little bit. But I was shocked that people just took it as gospel and started to just plug up the center, the neutral zone, and let the other team have the puck because we're going to get transition goals anyway. Yeah, you will, but so will they. For you to have 250 transitions, like turnovers, which is kind of average in a game, 450, so 225 per team, they have to have the puck 225 times. And if everything is equal, they're going to score 2 goals and we're going to score 2 goals. And then still it's up to whoever can make plays when the other team is not in a transition mode, when they are organized. So I had to come up at coaching clinics and talk about the 9th goal. And the 9th goal was a theory where just mathematics should make the players, the coaches, to understand that we cannot stand back and think we're going to get better. We have to play the game, but take advantage of the transitions when they're there. So what it basically is if we play 4 games, and back then you got 2 points if you won and 1 if you lost, or 0 if you lost. There were no, there were one if you were tied and nothing if you lost. So if you play 4 games and everyone had 225 transitions every game, everyone scored 2 goals, everyone had 4 points after 4 games. So you scored 8 goals, they scored 8 goals, everyone had 4 points after 4 games. But the team that can score 1 goal on a 5-on-5, or you can actually use mobility, and somehow break up that defense, somehow come through a neutral zone trap, or somehow make an offensive zone attack to score that 9th goal in that 4th game, they're going to have 1 point more. They're going to have 5 points. And now the opponent have 3. And if you put that into 80 points, 80 games in a season, like NHL was at the time, you'll be number 1 in the league and number last in the league from that point difference. It's easy to play transition because you have to have strong defense, you need good conditioned players and disciplined players. So you're going to get your 2 goals if you have that. But to score that 9th goal, you need guys who can skate and pass and read the play and make surprise passes and fakes and all those kind of things that are much, much, much tougher to learn. So you have to teach that for your team once they are 5 years old up until they're 25 years old. Otherwise, you will never have a 26-year-old who's actually capable of winning a game for you. So I had to spend a whole lot of time kind of redoing what I've done, because people know one thing and they think that's the gospel, and they don't think for themselves. You had 10-year-olds playing transition hockey in Sweden, like backing up, and try to score on the counterattacks. And the whole Swedish league was absolutely terrible. It was, I mean, Wally has seen it. Good players like Bengt-Åke Gustafsson and the players at the time hated hockey. They didn't want to play anymore. They just were told to go back, and hope for a mistake, and then maybe score a goal. So two reasons. How can I sell it to the player, and how can I unsell it to the coaches was my thought. And I thought I was ahead of both groups, but how to actually make them understand it was much tougher than just present data the way I did the first time.
If I could be so bold to ask just one more question, knowing that the rest of the group is sitting here just listening to me go off, and I apologize in advance for dominating this whole thing at this point. But the one thing that really stuck the test of time for me from that study that I've gone back to over and over and over again that I think is really fascinating is the whole idea, which was new to me at that time, which was that not everybody's on offense and not everybody's on defense at the same time. That there are some people are on offense while some people are still on defense, and that you could be the people furthest away from the puck, the best time for them to set up their next transition is in the time which you're on offense. So that always stuck with me, and I think that's held the test of time since the time I listened to it all the way through, and I've used that as a core piece to a lot of things in my own work, which I find is fascinating. And I wanted you to speak to that because I don't know how many people have had on the call have had an opportunity to see the study I'm referring to, but there's a point in which you talk about not everybody being on offense and not everybody being on defense, and that there's this trading of roles, and that your team could have the puck, but yet people furthest away from the puck, that could be their best opportunity to like set their defensive gap, for example, knowing that the probability of a turnover is high, and that you could prepare yourself by being smart, knowing maybe I'm not on offense, completely on offense right now. There's a primary triangle around the puck, secondary triangle, and that interaction. I'm hoping you could, just for the benefit of the group, talk a little bit about that concept, because I always thought that stood the test of time, even to this day, as a really fascinating process that, like I said, it stuck with me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we usually, at least we used to, we have a system for defense. 5 guys, you do these 5 different things. And they have another system for offense. You break out with 5 guys this way. And it was diagrammed from us coaches more like a 5-on-5 game all the time, either defense or either offense. And what we said was that in very general terms now, you control the puck 25% of the time. And the other team control the puck 25% of the time. The other 50% is unclear who actually control it. So we're in that transition stage. And the next thing that's going to happen is that we're on offense or we're on defense. We don't really know. And that's what we say. The game is not played 5-on-5. It's played in areas 2-on-2, maybe 3-on-3. but he's never really played 5-on-5 because part of the team haven't finished their defense yet or are getting set to play defense. So if 50% of the game is in that transition era, we better be good 2-on-2 and make sure 3 guys are already attacking ready to attack from the defensive position, but already in defense position if needed. And I think actually all coaches talk about that nowadays. Like third forward high is kind of cover the puck carrier, give back support for the puck carrier. I mean, I think a lot of coaches actually make sure that they have 3 guys high, even if they're on offense, and only maybe on a very clear scoring chance on a rebound or so, you go with 4 guys deep into the zone and not hope for the best, but calculated, take advantage of those chances. So the game is most of the time in transition mode. That's why half the team has to be offense and half the team has to be defense, so we can switch quickly enough with 1 or 2 players, not with 5 players.
Thanks, Bjorn. I really appreciate it. It's been great talking to you. I got to jump off now, but I really appreciate your time and hope we can connect again soon.
Appreciate you too. Thanks a lot.
Bjorn, before we leave that topic, when I was working with Dave in Japan, the Japanese were so skilled, but they couldn't think the game. And we were perplexed because they had a cultural problem where the older players had to receive the passes and get the scoring chances. And the first line was all 40-year-olds, and we had to change a culture. And at the time, sitting with Dave in the office, we came up with a diagram on transition. The game is transition. That moment pre-puck possession, turning it over, getting it and taking advantage of it, of switching to offense from defense. It's the entire game. That's the vacuum of the game where you take advantage of the reaction of the opponent to it. And so I call it the overlap between offense and defense. Everybody teaches offense, everybody teaches defense, but that moments in the game in the small area where possession's going to change is what they have to be aware of and take advantage of that moment more quickly. So I just wanted to share that with you. We have a young fellow on from Massachusetts, Al Ramsey. Al's a minor hockey leader, coaching his kids and trying to establish a healthy perspective with his game in his community. So Al, you haven't been able to get on for the whole one, but I'd just like you to introduce yourself to Bjorn, please. Bjorn's background is just amazing. He'll be able to possibly ask you a question about your environment and what you're dealing with and give you some insights. Go ahead, Al.
Sure. Thanks for the introduction, Wally. Well, I'm really disappointed that I wasn't able to get on for the first of the call because I really enjoyed that little bit of conversation there. And I wish I could have heard a little bit more about the transition stuff, but unfortunately work got in the way this morning. But as Wally mentioned, I'm the hockey director at a youth association. I'm a coach developer for USA Hockey in Massachusetts. And so I do coach training and as part of their certification program. I'm also coaching my son's team. He's a 9-year-old, so it's a group of 9 and 10-year-olds. In the association that I'm the hockey director at, we've got about 500 kids at the moment. So it's a fairly large association.
Which town in Massachusetts?
We're based in Taunton, but we cover a lot of southeastern Mass. We actually have about a dozen towns that kind of fall within our association. We've got, on the order of, I think we've got 5 teams at 8U, we've got 6 teams at 10U, 6 teams at 12U,
Wow.
5 at 14U. So it's a decent size. We're one of the larger. Next year we'll probably be one of the largest in the state. But we've done a lot. It's interesting. Like USA Hockey right now, they actually put together a really great presentation around position and what is position in terms of offense with the puck, offense without the puck, defending the puck carrier, defending away from the puck, and then the transition between those different roles. So I've been working on I've been working with this idea of like, how do you communicate that starting from when kids are like 5, 6 years old, and how do you coach that? Knowing that if you assign them positions like center, right wing, left wing, and defense, and you tell them that that's their role, that sends a message versus what the roles of the game actually are. Mm-hmm. So we've been doing a lot around coaching without positions. Starting with the little guys playing their cross ice 4-on-4 with no positions whatsoever, and with my 9Us now where it's playing 5-on-5 full ice, because they do that at 10U here. Now we have forward and defense, kind of separated, but the roles are really around like dog and the puck, which is our kind of pressure role, and then we've got foxes who've got to be smart and arrive in the right place at the right time, and then we've got eagles that play above the play but can swoop in at any time. And seeing them be able to, like, when you coach it that way and you design small area games around these roles, and USA Hockey's big on designing small area games with constraints, the constraints-led approach. So for us, the way that we'll do that is not so much around putting in different rules into the games, but we'll manipulate the number of kids, so odd man situations, and then where the puck is placed to start out the drill. So it forces them into different situations, so they have to adapt. And then having situations where other players can join, so it can become an odd man or take somebody away, whatever. But to see these kids play and the way that they transition between roles like seamlessly as 7, 8, 9-year-olds, it's amazing. Like, it's really been a fun couple of years playing around with this, and I've sent a couple of videos off to Wally. I've got some better ones now with the 9-year-olds because they really get it. But it's so interesting to me, this idea of transition, and it kind of started from, or at least in my mind, it started in a conversation that we'd had with a training that Brad McKenzie did, and Wally, you were on that training.
Yeah.
Where he did this presentation of an NHL game, and he's looking at 60 seconds, and I think it had transitioned like 17 times, between different situational, and the tactics that you apply in that situation. It was just so fast. And it's like, we can't be trying to teach these kids, a certain position and a certain, trying to gear them up towards a certain tactic. Obviously, USA Hockey's big on skills and small area games, and not teaching like the breakout to 9-year-olds anyway. But like, being able to teach them to think, and being able to teach them to adapt and to transition, and to adapt not just between transitions of the situation in the game, but transitions between different roles depending on where the puck is and where their teammates are and where the opponent is. It's so interesting to me. So then I'm gonna look up your study just to get a little bit more background after the call. But anyway, that's my spiel.
Bjorn,
study is over 30 years old, so it's I'm sure they're more modern and more extensive studies out there now. But at the time, it might have been an eye-opener for some. But the game hasn't changed. Like, there is this transition time that's dominate the game, and you have to be very good there. But unfortunately, the other team is equally good, have equally numbers of chances. So there's more to it than just transition. You have to. And Wally was talking about the Japanese teams. Yes, they had some skills. They could skate and shoot and pass, but as you said, they were not thinking the game. And I think most of the time it's because we do these drills, not games like you do, drills. And the coach says you swing down here and you're going to get the puck here, you're going to pass it here. And sure enough, every time you swing there's a puck coming at you. And sure enough, there's always a guy standing where we're supposed to do in a drill. And they don't even have to look. They can look at the puck the whole time. And just by the spot on the ice where they're supposed to receive the puck is the only time they look up, and then they look down at the puck again. But they never learn to make decisions. They never learn to be creative. They just follow those lines. And then we expect them to play in the game after. So if we do drills, they have to be much more game realistic, so the player has to look up and see what's the best solution is. And obviously put it in the game situation as quickly as possible, as soon as the skill level is ready for that kind of situation. But then in Japan, then where we couldn't really take our game against the opponent, we only scored goals on power play, and it sounds like bragging, but it's actually disqualifying our own job. Even though it was the Olympics where Gretzky and Messi and those guys played, Japan has the best power play in the whole tournament. With that said, we didn't score any other goals, so it didn't really help us. That was the only time we could score, was when the opponent had 4 opponents Besides that, we had no tools, no game sense, not enough yeah, ability to actually create some kind of offense 5-on-5.
Bjorn, I just wanted to mention related to that, 1998, the Soviets were our key opponent. We could play them 5-on-5. We matched them 5-on-5, but on the power play, it was impossible. We couldn't defend them. And their skill level and their speed of thinking and execution, I'm wondering how free they were in terms of interchanging a position back in that era. Can you comment on the Soviet game? Because what Al was referring to, I believe, is first, second, third, fourth, fifth player. You might line up in a position, but the reality of the real game of this sport is once the puck's dropped, with the D jumping up, and like one of the things Daryl's saying is the D surfs to the goal line in the offensive zone. So interchangeability appears to be the thing. Were they interchanging that much back in the 80s?
For sure, because in Sweden we played 3 forwards and 2 defensemen. And what was new back then is that they have 5 units. It was always the same 5 on the ice. And when I say always the same 5, you can read it both ways, because a lot of time it was Makarov, Larionov, Krutov, Kasatonov, and Fetisov. Like they were on the ice all the time. So, but there were second and third and fourth 5 units too, and the defensemen were just as much involved in making the plays as the forwards were, and that was for us something completely new, and I'm sure it was very new in NHL, because you had very separate way of playing at that time. The forwards were not really capable of playing defense, and most defensemen were only capable of making a breakout pass and a slap shot from the blue line, but any other offense like that was very unique, such as Coffey, and Bobby Orr, and those very unique players. But the bulk of players had a very much limited role if they played defense. So yeah, they. I remember in 1981, and that's might be the best year they had. World Championship is in Sweden, in Gothenburg. So I'm a young guy, and I got the honor to be a volunteer for the Swedish Hockey Federation to diagram all practices for Team USA. And so we were a group to scouts, if you want, for every team, and we should diagram what they were doing. But most of the other coaches were much older than I, so they just said, if you're going to go and watch the Russians anyway, like, you do the guide diagram for me. So I basically watched every game and every practice for the whole World Championship. And when we saw the Russians, they have these flow drills where they were going 2-on-1, they came back and it became 3-on-2, they came back, it became 4-on-3, they became back, it was 5-on-3, and they were just going, and you never know if it was Kasatonov, who was the most defensive of them all, if he was leading the attack, or if it was Fetisov who scored on a rebound. You never know. Anything could happen. And I was watching this as a young coach, and I said, there is no way anyone can beat them. There's just no way. And the way it happened was that the last game of the tournament became a final game. At the time, it was not the playoff. It was just points. But if Sweden won, they would have won the championship. And if Soviet Union won, they would have won. So Sweden going to play at home ice with a very strong team, because they just beat everyone else in the final against the Soviet Union. And I thought, well, no, I mean, yeah, if we can keep it close, that's going to be good. And after one period was 1-1, and I said, this is unbelievable. Like, 1-1, I never thought they would be able to keep up with him. Second period ended 9-0. The final score was 13-1. So that's how the difference between the number 1 in the world and number 2 in the world at that tournament was at the time. So obviously they said, well, Canada didn't have the best team and US didn't have the best team. So Canada Cup 81 is going to be a true value, how good they actually are, because now they're going to be up against the likes of, whoever were the stars at that time. Remember, in the Canada Cup, Canada didn't win. Oh, they did win the first one, but very, very narrowly against the Czechs in '76. So now 81, they came much better prepared. It was not Phil Esposito coming off the golf course to play anymore. It was a prepared team. So obviously the final is against Soviet Union and Canada again. And Wally, remember, it's probably with a broken heart. 8-1. Canada lost 8-1. You know, players like Lafleur and Mike Bossy, and Canada had the top 4 scorers in the tournament: Gretzky, Bossy, Trotti, and Lafleur. But when it came to actually playing as a team, you had 20 scorers on that other side who were able to score a goal each. And one goal stuck in my mind all the time. It's a 4th line player. His name is Skvortsov. You probably never heard of him, and we never heard of him again. He gets the puck in a penalty kill, and Canada played Guy Lafleur on the defense. So he faked the shot, and Lafleur just took a turn out to the side, and he had a breakaway, and he scored a goal in the shorthanded goal against Team Canada. And I don't think they ever got the recognition for playing a good hockey. They got criticism for being 12 months of training camp and steroids and all kind of accusations, which are probably true. But looking from just a pure hockey sense, like a game sense, they played a fantastic hockey that we haven't seen since. And we're starting to see things like that again. With players like Crosby and like David, and players that have that complete skill set. They can play defense and forward. They can interchange with anyone and do the job as good as anyone. And so I don't know what the question was from the very beginning. It went off to a monologue, but yes, they could change position because they had the skill set to play defense and forward. Where Guy Lafleur, in my example, was a gifted goal scorer, fantastic goal scorer, but don't put them on defense on the power play because even the 4th line are going to DQ, and that cost you dearly in the competition against a complete team like the Soviet was at that time.
Bjorn, I have a question to Al related to this topic in terms of the free play, overlapping interchange, decision making that the Soviets were able to execute. They were, Al, with your group playing small area hockey, it's really difficult to line up at positions, have face-offs and have to line up, and quite often they just change on the fly. So it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you've mentioned now you're playing whole ice hockey, and you're still coaching decision making and allowing them to play more freely.
Yep. And
you're amazed at the results you're getting. And my point is, I believe that what you're doing, and this would relate to the Soviets, this could put them ahead of the Soviets. In theory, allowing young minds to process information and make their own decisions, they can develop the speed of their brain far better, given freedom to think and make decisions and interchange without being overly coached to play positionally well. So Al, where do you think is this going to go? Are you getting any kind of heat from people watching, parents that wonder their kid has to be a defenseman, that kind of thing? Can you comment on that?
So a little bit. I wouldn't say heat, right? But I think the one thing that we did, so we did move to full ice hockey this year. So I do have a little bit more structure than, in previous when we were doing the cross ice stuff, in that we've got forwards and defense. Now, in terms of forwards and defense, I think every kid on my team has played defense and forward this year. But within the roles that we've established, the kid could become a forward during his shift, and they know they understand sort of the concept behind what they're trying to do when they're out there. With the parents, absolutely, they have a very different idea of what position is, right? So the very first thing that we did while we went through that mission statement exercise that you had provided, and I had a fairly detailed presentation put together with, you know, what we were trying to do and why, and how we are talking to the kids and the kinds of things that we're saying. And we've used those as catchphrases all year, right? Like, I don't know how many times over the course of this year the kids have, you know, we've kind of gone through and done a little bit of a cheer. Like, when they have the puck, we're all on defense. When we have the puck, we're all on offense. Closest to the puck is the dog. You know, the next two are the foxes. What's the fox's job? Fox is smart, get in the right spot at the right time. What's the eagle's job? You know, like things like that, like over and over and over again. And then to play around with it in practice and stuff. So the parents hear it. They heard it from the get-go, and then they hear it every day in the, you know, in the locker room when we're there talking. Because again, we kind of go through this every practice to kind of get kids thinking that way. And even still, you know, you hear the odd parent who will yell something from the stands about, get on your own side. You know, we were playing pond hockey the other day in practice, and one of the parents was yelling, defense! So I came over to the glass. I said, there's no defense on pond hockey. You know, we're all on offense. We're all on defense. Anyway, it was, we had to laugh over it. But, you know, you gotta address that. And you can have fun with it with the parents, too. But honestly, like, when they see it, because, again, you know, I would say our team is, you know, we're smaller. We have probably I would say, more late developers on my team than early developers, playing against teams with primarily early developing kids. Like, we're small. We're very small compared to some of the teams we play against. We have two that are actually too young to be playing in the league, but because they're twins and they have an older brother on the team, they ended up there. And we're having a lot of success. Like, I think we're, you know, in terms of like success, we're in second place in our league. You know, we went out and we played a team last week, and they played the concepts to a T. Like, they really did a good job. And the parents all afterwards were saying, oh, it's a great game. But when you look at, like, when I go to Live Barn and I clip it out, you can find, like, very, very clear examples of the kids playing a 1-2-2. You can find very clear examples of the kids playing a 2-1-2. You can find clear examples of a 1-3-1. Like, all these things that are actually, like, very, like, really tactically sound, you can see it come out. And the kids are the ones that are deciding to do that. Like, we never told them to do that. We never told them to, you know, go 1-3-1 and get the puck to the bumper. Like, we've kind of played around with that kind of thing in practice, like with small area games and encouraging that kind of thing to happen. But, you know, it wasn't like we sent them out there that shift to do that. They just evolved, right? So, and we see them making those decisions. Like, if, you know, if it's a time to be a little bit more conservative, we'll see a clear 1-2-2. Or if it's a time to be a little more aggressive, we'll see, you know, 2-1-2 kind of evolve. And it's been a lot of fun. Like I said, even though we've delineated between forward and defense this year, like, all the kids are, like, in that last game, I think we had 3/4 of the team move between one and the other, like, on the bench when we sent them out. And then during the shift, obviously things kind of evolved. But, like, at this point, all the kids, you know, like, I would have no problem putting any kid on send them out for a face-off on D in our zone. None. That's what I should.
Before Mike speaks, Bjorn, I think that Al is experimenting, and on the advice, you know, everything we do is based on our life experiences and the people we interact with. And he's been privy to Daryl Belfry's presentations, and he's working with kids. And so, your reaction to that, Bjorn, in terms of what he's doing, can you comment?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you said that they might overtake the Soviet Union. I think the way you expressed it. I think U.S. already have. I think U.S. has an extreme success with their development system. When you watch their junior teams, the male and the women, I mean, they tend to me to be the best skaters in the tournament all the time. That seem to be the most complete players. And I think they come a long, long way, and they play away. And maybe that's partly why I think the game is changing, because U.S. has brought a creative and athletic team approach to it that was lacking for decades. So I think they're already there. I don't think they need to worry too much about playing games on any age level with the former Soviet Union or with Russia. Maybe if they occupy Ukraine and get a few more players, they might be better again. But right now, I think U.S. have passed them already. The other thing is, I have a tough time myself to teach in small area games as the main tool. I always need to work on the skill that you will need, and then put them into a game situation to execute that skill. So for me, it's always have to be a balance for plays that you actually need to do or need to learn to be able to do in a game, and then try them out in a game situation like a small area game. And I know some really good coaches can figure it out with primarily small area games, but I was never successful in that. I had to work on the individual skill and then hope that they can use that skill in the game situation. So I think there's a middle way that worked better for some, and I don't think I'm unique being unable to teach too much through the area games, small area games. But I know another coach. Who was that? Yeah, he was a captain on the Canadian Olympic team in '76, I think, or maybe even '80. Ron
Ron Carpet?
Davidson. Ron Davidson?
Yeah, Ron Davidson, yeah.
Yeah. He had some hockey program going on for kids for a long time. I think he lives in the Ottawa area. And he taught everything with area games, and he was very passionate about it, and he had good solutions for everything they need to learn. So I know it's possible, and I don't say he's the best, but he's one of the guys I talked to when this was a new thing, and he had a lot of experience with it early in the development stage of this method. But I was never able to implement it too drastically. I needed the guys to understand what skills we were looking at and how to do it properly, and then put it in the game situation.
Mike Benelli.
Yeah, thanks.
Go ahead.
This is great, Bjorn. Thank you. And Al, I just want to echo, I'm here in Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, basically, really, and even when I built the rink in Danbury, Connecticut, it was like back in 2001, I guess it was, and we had gone to cross ice hockey and blue pucks, and it was such a battle. I remember, it's amazing to me, it's still a battle, but it was a real battle back then. It was like, basically, blasphemy that the kids weren't playing real hockey. And I just would love to hear, maybe because of where you've been around the whole world and watching these development structures kind of, organically grow based on how you established the program to begin with. And I don't know if we can ever go back in the US, but I would like to know, I think one of the problems we have in establishing the free play environment and the ability for players to dictate their development rather than us structuring them and joysticking them. Is it maybe because we put the kids into league play and winning and losing kind of environments way too early? And there's a lot of anxiety, right? Even with me, I coach a 14U team of boys. I can't go back to free play because they just don't have the skill set or the IQ to do it as a team and be successful. My idea of success is different than the parents, right? And the scoreboard, and ultimately the kids, because the kids respond to mom and dad saying, I can't believe this guy doesn't run a system where we can win. And I'm like, well, I don't want you to win. I want you to win at 18. Like, I want you to be a player that continues to play. So I would just love to hear maybe your thoughts on that, those roadblocks you've hit and kind of how you articulated and approached, how you talk about development over the fear of not developing to win, I guess.
Yeah. I even with pro players, like even with adult players, even with like 30 or 35-year-old players, I usually say this: games are won with our strength, and they are lost by our weaknesses. Practice is to turn our weaknesses into strength. And the purpose is not to win today. The purpose is to win the last game of the season. And I also tell them, I'm not here to make you win. I'm here to make you winners. And I'm not going to coach you to success. I'm going to coach you to be successful. And I think when you get that mindset that when we work on things is to eliminate those weaknesses and turn them into strength, because we need a strength to win the games. And we're not trying to win today, we're trying to win the last game of the season. And obviously for youth players, it's that last game is few years down the line. But I still think that this the mindset that I'm not coaching you to win, I'm coaching you to make you a winner. I think that's something that the players buy into, because they all want to be winners and they all want to be successful. So, it's going to help me to be successful. I wonder when the success is coming, but I'm going to do what he's asking me to do. So I changed the role a little bit from I'm responsible for the team to win, and if someone's going to get criticized, it's me because I put the wrong guy on the ice. No, I put the right guy on the ice because he's so weak that if he doesn't play, he's not going to get better, and he's going to hurt us in the finals. So yeah, and get the parents to understand that I don't know, because I don't talk to parents, because anyone over 18, I never talk to a parent. I say I'm not allowed to.
Right, and I'm primarily working with young kids and parents, new parents and players that are just coming in. And I think just like I say about Wally's mission statement exercise and this call, right, and the fact that Al Ramsey's jumping out of a work thing, or Adele Belfry's jumping out of work to get on a call like this to listen to you, it always comes down to the fact that it's the wrong people listening to you. You don't need us listening to you. I need the 17 other assistant coaches I have up in the stands to listen. So I think it's just a matter of just understanding, and I always struggle with that as a director and a coach and an educator. Really, in my role is that you just have to believe in the process, right, and kind of wipe the noise out a little bit, and hopefully you're reaching the kids and the parents that want to be reached, and really can't lose sight of it from the people that just really would struggle to get to this point in the development of a player.
Yeah, and the critique you can get, or the disappointment you can get, is always related to your expectations. If you don't expect anything, you cannot lose anything. You can't win anything either, because you don't know what it means to win if you're not aiming for something. But if you don't have any expectations, you can never be disappointed. And if you put the expectations right, that's the only thing you can be criticized for, and that's the only thing you have to answer for. So I tell the players early in the season that this is what we're doing, and some player, and in your case some parent, then will come and say, why is he on the power play and I not? Or we haven't scored for 3 games in power play, but you still haven't changed. If I set the tone right from the very beginning, everyone knows that we are developing a broad talent pool in our roster, so we will be successful. Yes, we will lose a few games on our way, but that's part of the development, and it's all going to lead up to making everyone successful, you included. And I had my best player in Denmark, I don't know if it was a good example, because I'm not sure it works very well. But anyway, my best defenseman in Denmark, and he was so focused on playing power play that he was untouchable on the power play, he thought. So I told him, and it came for him out of the blue, maybe I should have prepared it better, but I said, okay, I'm going to take you off the power play and put you on PK as our first choice for a little while. And you could see, like, here goes my paycheck, and I never gonna have points, and I never gonna all those thoughts got into his head. And I said, if we're gonna win, you have to be complete defenseman. I don't know who's gonna be healthy at the end of the season. You might not be, and I need someone else to be able to play that power play. And I don't know if the PK defenseman will be healthy. I need you to be able to kill penalties, and I need you do it well. And the better you do it, the quicker I can take you off the power play, off the PK, and put you back on power play. But it also has to be at the guy who's practicing power play right now, that he's successful. So your job is to help him to have success on the power play on your spot, and for yourself to have success on his spot on the penalty killing. And it took a couple of games where he was bitter, and sometimes you just bench him for a shift and that goes over, but he was bitter for a few games. But then he started to love penalty killing. He started to go on the ice and just feel like, I can do this. Like, where are those guys? The puck is mine. I'm going to win this one. And you could feel that we have now more quality on the team, because now this guy is our best power play guy, but he's also our best penalty killing guy. And I know I talked to him after season that your value for a contract just raised, because you're a more complete player than when you signed your last contract. So I don't know if it helped him, but I think he understood the message and accepted it more than embraced it. But for a short time, he was embracing it because he played penalty killing with pride and passion. And maybe later in his career, he actually used that. I don't know. He was fired as a coach this year, so maybe he didn't last this year. Last year, he got fired as a coach, so maybe he didn't learn the lesson. But anyway, it's just one example that if you put the expectation that you're going to win, then you're supposed to be criticized when you're not winning. If you tell the expectation, if you don't, sorry, I babble all the time, but Wally, you know Piper very well. You know Cherry Piper?
Yes.
Yeah. So she came to Oval Extreme because she wanted to prepare herself for the Olympics in 2010. And she's obviously one of the best scorers in female hockey at the time. But she also played with Wickenheiser and Danielle Guayet. So I could have scored a goal in that line. Maybe not as many, but one. So anyway, I had her on a line with a Swiss girl. And the Swiss girl was not very good and not very hardworking. So I can understand that's not much fun to play with her. But I said from the very beginning, I'm going to rotate the line until the line function. When the line function, I'm going to put you in another line. So you make it work, because then I see that we have another option. If it doesn't work, we need to do it one more game. And while you know that team was so strong, so we won most every game anyway, so we didn't have to worry about actually focus on winning. The girls were so much better than most other competition. But anyway, she came up one day and said, I came here to make Team Canada better, not to make Team Switzerland better. And I told her, Cherry, you don't have to worry. You're not making anyone better right now, especially not yourself. So then we said, on this team, we work to build up a team for the playoffs, and we work to build up every player to have success in the Olympics, if they're going to play for the Swiss team or for the Canadian team. We even have an American girl in net, which obviously was not very popular, but she never made the American Olympic team, so she was not the threat. But anyway, and I said, so I kicked her off the team, but it's the wrong word. I put her on suspension. I suspended her from the team, and I said, this is what we work on here. If you want that, if that's what you want to do, you can apply to get the job back on the roster. But until then, you're suspended. You can't train with the girls. You can't play with the girls. You're not part of the team. And it took 3 practices, maybe 2. And then she came and she said that I can't write the application. And I said, I never said anything about writing. You have to apply to get this job. And this is what the job is. And then she started to talk. And she said, I want to do this and I want to do this. I want to do that. Okay. So we got 1 practice for probation, or whatever you call it, tryout. And every practice after that is a tryout for you. And she made the Olympic team. And as far as I remember, they won it in 2010 in Vancouver. So I'm not saying that I helped her, but certainly created some hierarchy on the team that everyone has equal value. And if you want to be a hockey player, you have to be able to play with everybody. And maybe she learned something, I don't know, but it certainly settled down things on the team to focus on what the team was all about at that time.
Bjorn, I could tell a million stories about those kind of situations because I coached the Oval team after Nagano.
Yeah.
And having lost to the States, I had Wickenheiser and Bottle join us after Nagano for the national championships. I had 2 players on the Olympic team, on the Oval team, that after the Worlds.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And we played at Ontario in the final with 9 Olympians. And we beat them in the final game, and I rolled the lines. And after the game, I said to Haley, "You didn't think we could win, did you?" She said, "No." And I said to her, "Remember one thing, the best team wins, not the best player." And I had a lot of things occur in the next 3-4 years before, or in the next 2 years before Salt Lake City. But elite players are that kind of a challenge. And we're raising elite players, kids, double shifting them, triple shifting them, allowing them to stay on the ice too long, get away with bad habits, show disrespect to officials. So, the minor hockey game, to me, and I'm exaggerating those problems, but they're there. What happens in minor hockey is teams just shorten the bench to win. They ignore the team building behaviors that a team has to have, and they don't address them. So, boy, I really appreciate you mentioning the story about the Oval and that, because I think that's just the essence, the result, the score clock, the championship, the Olympic gold medal it's a distraction. You've got to focus on the process. And we'll do that mission statement exercise, Bjorn, so I can pick your brains, because it fits into getting everyone, the parents, players, coaches, all on the same page of understanding what they're there for. So I really appreciate your input. Anybody else Tom has got his hand up again, and I know Tom is probably chuckling because having worked with you, Johanny Walston, and many European coaches over the years, he is a transition games guy. So Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, just when Al was talking about everybody playing every position, I just thought how I presented. I've been doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for forever, and what I say is everybody has a home position, because you need that clarity sometime. So if I'm playing center and I'm going back to our zone with the guy that's playing right wing or whatever, I would go deep in the zone because, that's my primary thing. Now, if I'm way behind him, then he would go, the first guy back would go. So I think that's a way to, kind of sort things out. Yeah. Otherwise, you can have multiple players going, reading that this is what they're supposed to be doing at this certain time. But, I worked a lot with Johanny, but Erika was really big on the transition too. And, I listened to a lot of things he did. And I think it was 95 that Bjorn, that you gave that talk in Toronto. Oh, yeah. Because I was there. Yeah. And anyway, that's how I kind of defined to my players. And then we do all sorts of transition games with no positions. And that Wally helped me coach a few years ago, and we did all these kind of things. But just want to throw that in there.
Bjorn, I could ask you a million questions, and if you got more time, I'll ask you another few. We got to talking here. I always manage, for some reason, people bring up that mission statement, but I'd like to go back to the X's and O's of the game, and the discussions we had last night, and this really intrigued me. Where is the game going at the highest level in your mind? Where can it go? What are the possibilities?
Obviously, I don't know. I just see a trend that I like a lot, that it's going more to complete players, as we talked about before, and players who are developed in youth hockey to only do one thing will probably not end up playing on any championship team in any high league later, including college or major junior, whatever. They just have to be able to fulfill more than one role to function in the hockey that we will play in the future, and it's already being played on the highest level. More than that, I can't really see the future, but I like the trend that we're seeing right now. That play against like Crosby and McDavid and those kind of players are the stars, and they were stars every game except when Crosby had concussion for a full year, and the whole league was hoping that he would get back as soon as possible. So the league's going to look after their entertainers, the best players, and kids going to aspire to become the next Crosbys and McDavid.
In relation to that, Tarasov had two words. He called it star teamwork. And there wasn't much difference between their first and their four lines, units of 5. And that's the way they played. And when they came to Detroit, I think the results they got, there was a great Soviet influence. There was always a great Swedish influence with probably the best captain ever, one of the best defensemen to play the game from Sweden. But
Lidström Niklas.
Yeah, and I, I always have a vision for the progress of the game and where it goes, because with the female hockey, I watched Nagano and they weren't athletes. They couldn't shoot, pass, and think together. And after Nagano, I tried to approach developing complete players that could do everything at all positions. And to compete in Salt Lake City, we created 10 penalty kill players and 10 power players in the second half of the season only. We rolled everybody and played all roles in the first half. And we lived with that in the Olympics. It was just a way of, making everybody happy, earning a role, a proper role, but having a role and feeling valued. So that's sort of the art of coaching. And we have a group of people that aren't on the call that took a class called the Art of Coaching, 30 people who will be privy to this this call, and they will be able to digest it. I just think the young generation of coaches coming up today, and more importantly, the players are going to be more open-minded, which will allow them to be more creative and less inhibited and structured in the way they perform. So I like the way the game is going, and I'm really looking forward to the time we got left to keep trying to make a difference and make it better. So, Al, you're doing a great job out there, and I'm glad you're involved with USA Hockey. They're doing some great things in youth hockey to develop that, but they are getting pushback from club teams, which are creating programs that create havoc with a sense of entitlement and the outcome of getting drafted or whatever, interfering with their actual development to be quality players and quality people. So, well, I don't have much else to add here today. And Bjorn, is there anything in particular in your mind? I got a text from Daryl wanting your address to send a book. So I'll remind you, if you're going to be in South Africa, if you could send me the Federation office address with maybe the name of the president.
Yep.
And I'll pass that on to Daryl and he'll send you the book.
Thank you.
And once you've read the book, I think we'll talk about what you get out of it and where Daryl's coming from. But I'm looking forward to getting you on next week. And I'm really curious about your essay. I'm going to share it with everyone. And hopefully we can get you on next week, Bjorn, and we'll to discuss what you're doing now and related to the team building, the culture piece, the dynamics of history that Africa has gone through from colonialism to now being a democratic country and trying to work together. Because it's the game is bigger than hockey. You know, hockey is game is life, and the life you're facing and the things you're dealing with sport are really lessons for us to learn as adults. So, uh, anyone else got any questions for Bjorn before we close off? And Bjorn, I want to thank you very much for coming on. Anything, Bjorn, you want to add before we?
The only thing I want to say is you talked about the generational thing that the young generation, which is basically everyone, if you look at us, everyone else, the young generation, that they are more open-minded and more willing to do things. I think that's a truth with very much asterisk after, because the best coaches ever were the ones who were outside the box, or could think outside the box, or dared new things. There were maybe few of them, but they were the one who made the game the way it is today. And I think there will be the next generation also a handful of guys who will keep going, but the bulk will always be the one who do what I did when I was young, and my coach did what he did once he was young, and just keep the tradition going with not much of the innovation. So I am not so hopeful that the new generation from us, but I'm hopeful that there will be another, Ed King and Drake and Tarasov. You mentioned him. Like there were some guys who put their stamp on the game, and that will come ever, but there will be few.
Well, you're still putting a stamp on the game, Bjorn. And Daryl was really pleased to have you on because he was surprised because he didn't know that you would be on today, but he just will join the call randomly. And I think that, common community coaches might find his information pretty advanced and hard to interpret and follow. But I think he is one of those people that's open-minded, thinks outside the box, doing things his way. And he happens to be in a high position with an NHL team that allows him to work with the very best elite athletes and experiment. And like he said, the student is the teacher. So that's something that we'll close off with here. If anybody else wants to stay on, Tom usually hangs around. I'm going to talk about, Tom, you got to catch your bus to play your game today out in Olds. And we don't know if the hold the rope exercise is going to make a difference, but maybe the storytelling about team building with a national team might. We'll see. So we're just goodbye to everybody. Goodbye to Michael, Al. Al's still on now. Tom, I just wanted to mention you play Thursday today in Olds, and you play home tomorrow or Saturday?
No, we play at 7:00 at home tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Okay, good. We'll try to catch that game. Super. Okay. All right. We're going to sign off.
You did a great job with girls last night. Well,
Okay. Okay. Bjorn, take care. What time is it there right now?
It's 10 minutes to my next call, so it's 7:20.
7:20
Yeah.
in the evening.
Yeah.
Well, it's really nice because you are at a time which is compatible with the Sharks. And I think you can understand when I explain the name to you, the shark has to be living and breathing and to stay alive. and keep learning. And that's Tim
Yeah.
Bothwell's coining the phrase from the Woody Allen movie. So this was a tremendous example with a group of people that I think just want to learn and continue to grow the game. So
Yeah, and three guys from the Eastern time zone too, huh? So
yeah,
we're different places on the planet.
yeah. Now I'm gonna try to get. Hopefully you can get on next week, and I might promote it a bit and see if Dave will join the call
Yeah,
and just to connect because we're from a different era and there's some young generational coaches on, and I'm looking forward to the two females joining us. I'm not sure how Sammy Joe Small will be back, but Kim Ramsey had ice Kim McCullough had ice this morning. She texted me she couldn't be on, but they really add a lot to the Sharks in terms of the female perspective, the emotional.
Who's at the Olympics right?
Pardon? Pardon? Anyway, Sammy is broadcasting at the Olympics, and I don't think she'll be back. She's going to do the men's hockey games too, I guess.
have you ever contacted Guayette, Danielle?
Do I have whose contact?
Danielle Guayette.
Yes, I have her information. Yeah.
No, I have. I mean, I communicate with her too, but I think she's absolutely excellent. Like her passion and knowledge, and also the way she can present it, it's top class. So she would be an interesting person to talk to also on the board.
Yeah. She's been on.
Okay.
And she's too busy in her schedule with the Maple Leafs.
Well, I don't think she's so too busy, but I think she's extremely focused.
Yeah.
So she wants one job, not two. Like he doesn't want to have anything conflicting with her main job. So I think that's more her personality, that she doesn't want to spread herself thin. She wants to do one job correctly.
Well, her EC, the Maple Leafs have her doing skill work with them, and actually that was Haley's job, and Haley's more administratively involved in the process with the what the developers are doing at all three teams. And there was a COVID issue in the ECHL team in Newfoundland, the Leafs team, and she went down to coach because it was COVID for the coaches.
No way.
So I've always said that the first team to have a female on the bench in the NHL is going to learn so much more. The staff will learn more, the players will learn more, and watching Haley on the ice with Darryl, with Matthews and Marner and Spezza, and small area kind of instruction in games, it was just amazing to see the interaction and the respect that the relationship they have. The players truly respect them, listen to them, and there's a real good vibe there. And I found that out when I had the privilege of going to the Leafs rookie camp and spending a week with the entire organization. That the role they're playing there is absolutely huge, and I think it's going to make a stronger organization moving forward.
No, it's two women who broke through the glass ceiling, and there are more to follow.
Yeah,
I don't think Piper going to make it though, but there are other ones.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna have another call here. Hey, thank you very much for inviting me and giving me so much time to speak. I hope I didn't bore the guys who didn't get enough said themselves, but
Bjorn,
it was a pleasure to meet them.
You've got an African hockey.
Yeah, I put my African on. Yeah, because we have the coolest logo you ever seen. I don't know if you've seen it.
Looking good there, Bjorn.
Yeah, it's a rhino.
The rhino, okay.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll find out a bit more about that and the struggles that you're going through there. Okay?
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's not a struggle, but we'll talk about it more.
Okay, so long, Bjorn.
Yeah, thanks again. Wally.
Great seeing you, Bjorn.